Stand in terms of human rights. The theme of this week's African Union Summit is women's rights. Human rights, but do women enjoy the same rights? To explore this and other issues, our East Africa correspondent Sarah Kimani now joins us live from Kigali in Rwanda, where she is joined by the chairperson of the African Commission on Human Rights, Advocate Pansy Tlakula. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Good afternoon for having me, Aubrey. Indeed, we are joined in this beautiful city of Kigali by Advocate Tlakula, who will just be giving us highlights of what the African Commission of Human and People Rights does, and also just take us through the situation of human rights and women's rights on the continent. Let us take it out from there. Advocate, thank you very much for having me. One of the reasons that we called you is because a lot of people probably do not know that indeed we have such a commission. Tell us what your commission does.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights is the premier body for the protection and promotion of human rights on our continent. In fact, it's one of the oldest organs of the AU, having been established 29 years ago under the then OAU. So its main responsibility is to promote human rights, to protect human rights on the continent. We also investigate violations or allegations of violations of human rights.
But one of the things people will ask, let's just take this month alone. We've had cases in Kenya where a lawyer with his driver and client disappeared and later were found killed. We have seen the riots in Zimbabwe and how the people who, so to speak, say they're talking for human rights have been clamped upon. The same in Uganda, the violence in South Sudan, the list goes on and on. Would you say as a continent we're regressing? Where do we stand in terms of human rights?
I think we are making progress. Because yes, there have been incidents in the countries that you have just mentioned, but let's look at the whole picture. The whole picture on the continent is that most of our countries now hold elections. Multipartyism has also taken root. Of course, the quality of those elections is something that we can talk about. I think we have challenges. Terrorism, violent extremism on the continent and in other parts of the world, those hamper the full enjoyment of human rights. And I think the right to peaceful assembly, the right to peaceful demonstration, the right to freedom of expression, some of the rights, I think where we have challenges, particularly in the run-up to an election. We have also cases of arbitrary arrests, extrajudicial killings. So I would say that yes, we have made progress, but I always say that human rights protection and promotion is work in progress. It is never done. So we take 2 steps forward and maybe 3 steps backwards. What we need to do as Africans is to ensure that we commit ourselves to keep on going on to ensure that the situation improves.
So when you investigate a case of human rights violations in any country, what do you do with those, what you find, your findings? Is there a court, or do you hold the presidents accountable or the leadership of a country?
Because we are a quasi-judicial body, we are not a court of law. We make recommendations which we send to the country and encourage them to implement our recommendations. In cases where a country has ratified the protocol establishing the African Court on Human and People's Rights, we can refer a case to that court. So we use a number of initiatives. For instance, regarding the killing of a lawyer and his colleagues in your country, Kenya, we sent an urgent letter of appeal to the Republic of Kenya, asking them to investigate the matter and to come back to us. We have acted in a number of cases. We have just sent an urgent letter of appeal to the Kingdom of Lesotho, where 2 journalists, where one of them was assaulted, in fact shot, and they were arrested. The allegation is that they were required to disclose the source of the publication, the article that they published in the media. So we do act, we do send, we are alert, we monitor the situation, and we are the only body that is in a position to say to our leaders, this is the situation of human rights on the continent. The methods that we use to collect the information are quite thorough methods. So we feel that we are the ones who have the responsibility to just say, here is the human rights situation on our continent, this is where we have done well, and these are the areas where we need to improve.
It is a decade of women. Where do we stand? Women and human rights, a very important part of society. Where do we stand?
We are doing well, but we need to accelerate our pace, especially when it comes to gender parity. There are areas of concern. If you look at FGM, for instance, most of the countries are now criminalizing FGM. I think the situation of child marriages is also quite worrying. It's something that we have to look at. The participation of women in politics, I think we're doing well with Rwanda leading, as you know, in the world, but the economic participation of women remains an area of concern, particularly the participation of women in big business is something that we have to look at. But I think on the whole, we are doing well, but there is an area for improvement. We have to look at, for instance, the role of women in peacekeeping, because, conflict affects women more than men, or more seriously than men. So we have to just say, what role can men play in peacekeeping? And as the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, one of the issues that interests me is the role of women in the media, women journalists. I think the voice of women journalists, I don't hear it loud enough. There are struggles, there are challenges, the role that they can play to just change the narrative of how women are portrayed in the media. So it's one of the areas, I think, where we have not just paid special attention, but I think as a continent we have to look at the issue of women journalists.
Thank you very much. And on that note, where a woman journalist has been speaking to a woman chairperson of the African Human and People's Rights Commission, we wind up this interview. In the evening, we'll be talking to you about South Sudan. We expect that the AU high-level panel will be having a discussion together with the US, South Africa, and the East African Bloc, IGAD, to discuss the situation in South Sudan. We'll be bringing you that live right from here in Kigali. I'm Sarah Kimani. Thank you very much, Advocate.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Asante.